Some trade talk and the latest news right now on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Adam Azer, Dave Richard here on this Tuesday night for us, Wednesday morning for you. Thanks so much for listening to Fantasy Football Today in 5. So let's go through the headlines here. We spent a lot of time this morning, on Tuesday morning rather, Dave, talking about Allen Lazard and how he was a decent pickup. Well, he's going to be out because he is on the reserve COVID list. So now what for the Packers?
Now they should probably just not even bother playing the game. I mean, if you don't have Allen Lazard, what are you doing out there? No, they're moving forward, and it sounds like Marquez Valdez-Scantling has a chance to play. He would be my favorite Packers wide receiver to use in the game. He's got the most upside. We know what he can do as far as being a deep ball type of threat. But this feels like the first time in his entire career will he'll be relied on as the number one receiver. And I watched his 16 targets this season already, Adam. He's not making a lot of mistakes. He's still running with speed. His routes are good. It's not a complete route tree, but it's good. I think he's got a chance to really come through and pick up maybe 3 of those deep targets that Aaron Rodgers likes to throw at him, but maybe another 5 targets or so on short and intermediate routes against the Arizona Cardinals, who rank 20th in fewest fantasy points allowed, meaning they're top 12 in fantasy points given to opposing wide receivers.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Rodgers has played 6 games without Devontae Adams over the last 2 years, and he has been mostly great. 1 bad game, 4 great games, 1 fine game. Somebody's going to produce. Is Tonyan now an even bigger priority? Is Tonyan going to pick up the slack?
If you need a tight end, Tonyan is the bigger priority. And we saw it last year, 2 games without Devontae Adams. This guy had at least 11 non-PPR fantasy points, 16 full PPR fantasy points in both of the games. And I know that Arizona is the number 1 team, fewest fantasy points allowed to tight ends this year. Have you looked at who they've played? Are you familiar with the tight ends that they have defended? If you look at the list and you see that Tyler Higbee is the top name on that list, maybe you have an understanding of why they've been so great against tight ends. Now, I know that Robert Tonyan isn't Travis Kelce. He's not even Dalton Schultz, but he's still a guy that's going to get a lot of work. He's getting some good opportunities too. And just last week, had a deep catch for 25 yards, I believe it was. Had a long catch for a touchdown. He can get behind defenses a little bit. He's got some sneaky speed. I remember watching him during the offseason, and he flashed it from time to time. I imagine the Packers are going to count on him with 5+ targets in this game against Arizona.
A report that Jordan Howard could be activated. Nothing set in stone here, but he's on the practice squad for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep.
Does that take a little bit of the shine off of Kenneth Gainwell right now?
It takes a little bit more of the shine off of Boston Scott, because what did we see from Boston Scott in the same game that Miles Sanders got hurt? He had short yardage opportunities. That seems to be the strength of Jordan Howard. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if he was active for Philadelphia with Miles Sanders inactive, and he was used in specialty situations like short yardage from anywhere on the field, including at the goal line. So it could make Boston Scott kind of a dud. When I went and did my waiver claims and my fab bids, I ended up lowering my fab bids quite a bit on Boston Scott. I won't say how much lower I went because I know people in our leagues are watching right now, but it's not as high as we were talking about earlier in the show. Let's just put it this way. It's nowhere close to 10% of the fab budget. And Jordan Howard isn't somebody that I'm putting in bids for either. Gainwell's still the best Philadelphia running back to pick up off waivers, in my opinion.
What about this report from The Athletic, that the writer of the report, I'm sorry I don't have his name, I can look it up.
Bo Wolf.
Thank you. That he wouldn't be surprised if Gardner Minshew gets some starts for the Eagles at some point.
I wouldn't be surprised either. Look, as great as Jalen Hurts has been as a fantasy quarterback, 37 of the 75 fantasy points he's had, I think in his last 3 games, have come on the ground. He's completed fewer than 55% of his throws. He hasn't been great passing the football. If you're a quarterback in this league, you kind of have to be good at that. And if he's not helping Philadelphia win, then Jalen Hurts is eventually going to find himself on the bench. He needs to keep it going. He needs to do it this week against Detroit. If he loses this game against the Lions, it wouldn't surprise me if the chopping block is at least put on the counter for Jalen Hurts. And in a couple of weeks, if he doesn't improve, they do go to Gardner Minshew. And at that point, all bets are off with this offense.
You've got 15 seconds, Dave. Give me one buy low.
I'm going to give you 2 buy low because they're on the same team, Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. They're going to cost you a pretty penny still, but the fantasy managers of those players might be looking to get off of them at this point because they haven't been doing what they drafted them to do. Mahomes is especially a player to go look for. If you're 5-2, you don't love your quarterback, you're trying to make a playoff run, you should try upgrading to Mahomes.
Mahomes has been running more than ever this year, which is pretty cool.
And eventually he's going to start completing passes and stop turning the ball over. And that's when you're going to see 35 plus fantasy points per game.
And by eventually, Dave means Monday night. We will talk to you tomorrow on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Thanks so much, everybody.